It's time for Reason.
But what else can we do? You and I, the parents. I don't have a kid in school yet. She's 3. She will be going to school very, very soon. Am I going to have to be worried about taking her to school every single day? Am I going to have to be worried about someone wanting to harm her at an elementary school? And as we talk about legislation, as we talk about gun safety programs, as we talk about these things that the government can do to some degree, at the end of the day, it's you and I.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason. Starting off another day, making it happen, sipping on your coffee, thinking about what the day is going to look like for you, and we're here to help you with that. Welcome in. This is the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live in the heart of the nation out of Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, KQAM, all across the Mid-America Network and on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Welcome aboard. Good morning to you. It's absolutely great to have you along today on a Tuesday morning. 8 minutes past the hour, and let's get the morning started, shall we? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We got social media broadcasting all across. You can shoot me a message all over social media on Facebook, on Twitter at Hoosier Reason. The Facebook live feed is rolling as well. If you want to like it, share it, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you, whatever is on your mind there. Let's go ahead and get started. We got a heck of a show for you today. I am really, really, really excited about what's coming up today. It's 7 o'clock, just an hour from now. The man himself, Jonah Goldberg from National Review, is going to join us. He's going to talk to us about William F Buckley and the memorial that's going on today in many different cities around the United States. We'll be talking to Jonah Goldberg at 7 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, Tyler Tannahill for the 2nd Congressional District is going to be joining us, talking to us about his campaign, about the platform, and, of course, about his giveaway for the AR-15 that he has refused to back down from and has gotten a lot of heat from. He was on CNN a few days ago. We'll play some of those clips as well. So a great show, a lot of things happening. Also at the bottom of this hour, I do want to replay an interview that we had yesterday with Mays High School with the head of the physics department, and he is working on the private project. It's not publicly funded. It's not taxpayer funded. It is a private project that he is working on with private donations in order to put solar panels onto Mays High School, and a new initiative that may be starting across the state of Kansas. So we'll do that at the bottom of the hour, but until then, it's open lines to you, 316-721-8255. Let me start off with this morning. And I want to see a show of hands for how many individuals have been doing this yet this morning. Your daily routine, your morning routine, what you do every single day, both in the morning to get started and during the workday. I woke up this morning. I took my shower. I started getting dressed. I thought about what I was going to do today. I started going over my show prep about what I was going to discuss on the air. I started thinking about some of the projects that I was going to be working on after the show today at the radio studio. I got in the car. I turned it on. I let it warm up. I drove onto the road. I drove on the right side of the road. I used my blinker when I merged. I did everything that I was supposed to do. I took the shower so I would not smell during the day. I drove on the side of the road, not only so I would not get in trouble, but that way the other cars could pass me going the other direction. These are what we call social norms. These are things that we do every single day because that is part of our society, and that is the norm, the social norm of what we have in society. And you do majoritively the same types of things. You do not go out and say, hey, you know what? I don't feel like going to work today. I'm not going to go to work. I instead am going to go rob a bank. You don't do that, not just because it's illegal, but because it's not the right thing to do. You do not walk into your neighbor's home at 5 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, you know what? I ran out of coffee. You have coffee. I'm going to go steal some coffee from my neighbor. You don't do that, not just because it's illegal, but because it's a social norm. If we do not have social norms in society, then where are we? What kind of society would we be? Where would we be maybe if someone does not understand that there's a difference between private property and a lack of private property? That if you walk onto their yard the first thing in the morning, that they're probably not going to be very happy with you. If you steal their car in the morning because maybe yours isn't starting and you're having some issues, then that's probably not going to end well because you just stole your neighbor's car. It's called the social norm. Not just because we have laws that say that you cannot do that, but also because of the fact that it is a social norm. When you go into society, you go and you speak English for the most part, unless you live in a community where no one speaks English, and then you speak that norm because that's just the way that you operate on a daily basis. If you're living in, let's say in California, in like Little China, or if you live in some place where it's predominantly Hispanic or it's predominantly Asian, or some place to where everybody speaks that is the social norm because that's just what you do. That's how you operate. That's how you live. That's how you work on a daily basis. If we do not have these types of social norms, the basic foundation of a society for us to actually operate, to everybody understand some basic values. We may not agree on some. We may not always like some. And we may try to change some. That's how the evolution of these social norms actually work. But at the same time, you cannot just throw them out and say that anybody can do anything that they want to do without any type of repercussion in any way, shape, or form. Some individuals like to go down that mindset. And I wouldn't even call them libertarian, because even libertarians, for the most part, have some concept of the basic social norm. And I have a libertarian flavor to me as well. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the anarchists. We're talking about the progressives. We're talking about the ones that just question the most basic foundational societal norms that we have in order to function. Remember back in the day, and this was way back even before I was born, but I still like to hold true to it, is that when you meet somebody with higher superiority than you, when you meet somebody that's older than you, when you meet somebody that has a higher rank than you, that may has a little bit more credibility than you, when you meet somebody that you look up to, or that has a higher status than you, what do you say? Before, you used to say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. That's what you used to say. Nowadays, first off, nobody does that. Not very many people. I try to, but not very many people do that anymore, say yes, sir, yes, ma'am. But secondly, nowadays, even if you say that, you could potentially get in trouble because they may not identify as such. We hear about the name tags at Kansas University. Because no longer is it the name tag for you to actually have a name tag to let people know your name, but the pronouns of which you would be preferred to be referred to as. Therefore, if someone says, hey, sir, or hey, ma'am, or hey, dude, or dudette, or whatever people like to call, especially in college, the slang terms nowadays, if you say something like that, then you don't offend them. And it's a frustrating, complicated subject. It shouldn't be complicated, but it's a complicated subject today, and it shouldn't be. But I bring it up this morning because of the fact that it's coming back into the news tenfold. And normally, as the libertarian that comes out in some says, you know what, Andy, who cares? If someone wants to self-identify as something else, who cares? It's not harming anybody. It doesn't matter. And for the most part, you're right. Although, except for number one, it violates the social norm to understand that when you look at somebody and they're wearing a dress and they have long hair and they have painted their nails, that you would refer to as predominantly, and they probably have a chest that's sticking out a little bit more than others, then you would guess that they would be a female. And you would refer to them as such, and you would have the respect for them as such. If they're walking around with the spiked short hair and tattoos and they're kind of burly and built, then you would refer to them as predominantly probably a male. And you would show them that type of response and that type of respect. Today, though, you can't do that. And it's a very complicated world. It has disrupted the social norm in society of what we go under, of understanding that, okay, this person is a female, this person is a male, and I will respond to as such. Not that you really treat them any differently, except for women, you predominantly would probably treat with a little more respect, wouldn't you? That you would open the door for them a little bit more so than you would a guy. Because, hey, you know what? You're just being courteous to the female. You would probably open the door for a car for a female. You would let them walk through first. You would let them do something because that's just a courtesy that you have for females, because that's the way the social norm has been. And then it all got changed. And we don't want that now. Now we're trying to figure out how we actually, if you're younger especially, how you're trying to actually go out and try and date. Because how do you know that they're actually wanting a male if they don't refer to themselves as a female, because they may be female biologically, but they don't refer to themselves as such? And then you're just confused. and you don't know how to operate. And yes, it does affect society. If it only affects you yourself and you're doing it in your home, I don't care. You ever see those social media videos about the individuals that like to act very, very strangely in their home and they have weird lifestyles? Some of them try to be a joke. Some of them actually are very serious. The girl that tries to be a cat and sits in her home and eats her food out of a bowl on the floor and licks herself to wash herself clean and meows at the window as people walk by. Yeah, I've seen that. And instead of actually hyping up as a video, it should be mentally disturbing, and we should try and help that individual. But I digress from that story. Or you see the story of the individual that wants to be a lamppost and walks around and then puts a lampshade over her head and waits for her roommate to walk past her because she wants to be an object of furniture. That's what we have today. And if you're doing that, you know what? It may be silly, it may be ridiculous, but I don't care. It makes no difference to me. What does affect us is that when it actually gets involved in society, when you go out into the general public and general public does not know how to respond to this because it's something that's completely foreign to our social norm, especially when it affects our children. And if you're watching the Facebook Live video, you can see the photo that we have here. The transgender boy wins the girls' state wrestling title for a second time. Now tell me something. In a society where we have competition and we enjoy our competition, and we enjoy being able to have competition and being able to get our students and our young children active and engaged and think that they can be better than what they are right now and working hard to accomplish something. How are we supposed to live under a society when we have individuals that identify as a different gender competing in a sporting event where they're different than the other individuals, winning, and then saying that we can be whatever we want to be? How does that help us? How does that help us? We'll continue this story when we come back. It's a very interesting society that we live in today, is it not? This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-American Network.
Back into the Voice of Reason. Happy Tuesday morning to you. It's great to have you along today on the best day of the week. Trying to be, I know we are. I'm not trying to be, I know we are. We are the most patriotic, most positive, most energetic show on radio today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. The reason I bring this up, as you know, a couple weeks ago at the state Republican convention for the state of Kansas, this topic came up, talking about the pronouns and talking about the stance of the Republican Party and the fact that we passed the resolution protecting students, but saying that we recognize individuals based on two genders and the gender that God gave us, and that's the fact of the Republican Party. Not too many, very many people happy about that. We'll talk about that in a second. But then we see, okay, you know what? If people want to self-identify and live their own life the way they want to in the privacy of their home, I don't really care. It doesn't bother me in any way, shape, or form. But when it affects our children, and here's the story that we're seeing, because we're seeing more of this happen in sporting events that's supposed to be for, as you know, there is a difference in men and women when it comes to their biological makeup, when it comes to their upper body strength versus the lack thereof, when it comes to their speed, when it comes to their body build, when it comes to where the body stores fat. And it's all biology. It's science. It's fact. It's there. And if you don't recognize that, then we have a whole other issue when it comes to your concept of reality. And that's really the main fact of that. But now we see someone who is born for example, this wrestling story, state wrestling championship. For the second year in a row in Texas, a transgender wrestler has won the Texas Girls Class 6A 110-pound division. It is a female that was born a female who self-identifies as a male. Now, in the state of Texas, though, that you must wrestle in the category of which your birth certificate identifies you as, which is a female. The problem is that this female has been injecting herself with hormone testosterone supplements and steroid therapy in order to become a male. So for the second year in a row, we have a transgender individual who has self-identified as a male, but biologically is a female, forced to wrestle as a female, and goes in with an advantage by steroid therapy and testosterone supplements to become a male while wrestling against females who are now weaker and superior to her or him, whoever you want to self-identify as. That's what we're up against now. This is what we have to do, and they allow that to happen. Now, as you know, this is not going to be shown kindly upon the general public, so you have one of two choices. You can either continue to fight this and play the victim of, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to fight in this category instead of this category, I don't like that, yada, 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 or you can recognize the fact that the social norm does not accept this, and you can either bow out or you cannot wrestle at all. And that's probably what should have happened, but because the individual recognizes that there is a conflict here and a confrontation, then they probably got excited about that and continued on with the venture, and has now become the state wrestling champion for the 6A division, now 2 years in a row for the 110-pound division. As a female who wants to be a male with steroid and testosterone supplements in order to build up muscle mass stronger than what the other girls are allowed to do because they're not allowed to put those supplements in their body, and then ends up beating them. 316-721-8255. Is this a harm on society? I'd love to hear from you. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen.
Hey, good morning, Helen. How are you today?
Just fine.
Good.
The Lord Jesus Christ warned us that it would be like this in these last days, that it would be like in the days of Sodom and Gomorrah, where they would just, everything would pervert everything. So we've got this going on. But praise the Lord, this is a sign that we're close to the end.
Well, that's a good point. Now, here's the thing, because I always hear about the, being close to the end and waiting for the end to happen. At what point do you think that we've gone too far right now? We have and I still think this is a bit of a fringe ideology that wants to make this happen, and it hasn't really come mainstream yet. Do you think that we're going to go more mainstream before anything happens, or the fact that this is starting to try and slowly gain some traction shows that it's coming very quickly?
Yeah, well, we're living in the last generation, which began in 1948 when Israel became a nation. And a generation basically lasts, as it says in Psalms 90, verse 10, about, like a whole generation. Doesn't really go past 70 years. So we're at year 70 now? That since 1948.
Very interesting. Well, if that's the case, then it's going to be very, very quickly. So everybody get ready. Helen, I appreciate it very much. It's a great insight because you're right. I mean, this has been foretold. And if you recognize history and you follow history in any way, shape, or form, that when the social norm begins to change and we just question the most basic foundation of society, and we start questioning the most basic societal norms that we have, that's when society begins to crumble. Whether it's the end of the world because it is the end of times, or whether it's just because it's the fall of society, however you want to look at it religiously or politically, there's a correlation between the two. There really is. The ancient Romans, if you remember them, they were expanding. They were powerful. They became the empire, and they became more of a dictator than they were a republic, which was their first downfall. But then they began to entertain the masses with the Colosseum. And instead of actually educating the individuals and actually being active and engaged in society and wanting to better themselves, they were creating the Colosseum entertainment. They were creating the gladiators. They were creating those things. Then they started to accept the changes in the basic social norms. And when they did that, everything fell apart because the structure of society was not there, and they crumbled. They could not get taxes. They could not get anybody to agree on anything. They could not agree on the basic foundation of society, and that's what we're beginning to see here. So whether it is the end of times or whether it's the end of society, when we begin to accept the changes of just questioning everything, then we have nothing to fall back onto, because even the most basic foundation of a house cannot be structured that way. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Lots more coming up.
Giving the libs one dose of sanity at a time.
I'm not being aggressive, I'm being dominant.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
right. Yeah, welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It is a Tuesday, and we love having you along. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I want to continue that discussion that we've had in just a little bit. We got some audio clips that I want to play in a discussion that was happening at Portland State University just a few days ago, and some of the comments/protests that were happening, and we'll touch on that later on in the show. But I do want to get to an interview that we had yesterday. His name is Stan Bergkamp. He is he's the head of the physics department at Mays High School, as they are working on a special project with solar panels on the high school to help cut electric costs. This is what he had to say yesterday on The Voice of Reason. He's Dr. Stan Bergkamp in studio with us. Hey, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Andy. Thanks for having me in.
I appreciate you coming in here very much so. It is exciting that we're looking at an initiative like this, yet it is troubling that the question is it going to be worth it in the end? So before we get into that, let's talk about first where this idea come from. Let's say, you know what, let's put solar panels on the high school and let's save some utility costs.
This whole process started for me back with my father, and he grew up out in Cheney, Kansas, and where I did, and he was a simple farmer, but always stressed to us kids that you always leave the earth a better place than how you found it.
Sure.
Through soil conservation, whatever that process is. And so when I looked at all of the studies as far as potential climate change, and you can argue that all day, one way or the other, but there's also, like you mentioned, the financial savings. And so about 18 months ago, I had solar panels put on my own farm up on the northeast side of town, and I saw the savings. And I've taught at Mays for 25 years. It's a great school to work at. I teach great kids. I have very supportive administration, great parents. And I don't have any kids of my own, and so I saw this as an opportunity to leave something for the district and for those kids. Sure. And make an impact for their children and their grandchildren, and try and do something to change the paradigm about how energy is produced. And so last November, I went to the school board and offered to start what we call the Mays Solar Initiative and the See Beyond campaign to raise $385,000 to install it'll be the biggest solar panel system in the state on a single high school, 240 kilowatt system.
Wow.
Which will generate about enough electricity on an equivalent amount to keep Mays High School itself off the grid for about 40 days out of the year.
Wow.
If you look at that.
Sure.
Save about 270 tons of carbon dioxide emission, and also because it's a direct production of electricity. Unlike when you produce electricity from coal or natural gas, you have to boil water, turn it into steam, it turns the generator, and at the end of the day, this is what I tell my physics students, at the end of the day, you can make toast.
Sure.
And so with this, the solar panels are sitting right on top of the school. It's a direct production of electricity. You don't have to boil water. You don't have to transmit it. It's all right there, and it just made sense to me. And so the school board gave their blessing and said, hey, go out and knock yourself out. So far, we've raised about $53,000.
Very good.
A week ago Thursday, we got the endorsement from the mayor of Wichita, Jeff Longwell, who got his political start out at Mays, as he was president of the school board out there. And so that was a huge endorsement for him to come out and say, hey, let me help you out. I think this is a great deal. And this is what I tell people, is that this is not about Mays High School. This
Sure.
isn't even about Mays District. This is about changing the paradigm about how schools have the capacity to produce electricity. You have the environmental aspect of it. And I saw how excited my own students got when I explained the process to them. My students were like, wow, why haven't we been doing this for years? And I was like, that's a very good question.
Sure.
And so, I saw the enthusiasm from my kids. I saw the enthusiasm from the community. And it just seemed like a natural fit. And one of two things will play out. Either I'm going to be viewed as a visionary or the village idiot. And then there's not going to be a lot in between.
Well, I love the fact that, first off, I don't think you're going to be considered the village idiot for something like this. It's going to be a huge opportunity. And whether like you mentioned, the climate change thing, whatever the vision that we have for it, there's a need to look at this. And what I love about it, and I'm glad you mentioned the students and how excited they are, is because it takes the teaching and the learning from them to a whole nother level. It's not sitting in the classroom reading a book or doing a lab experiment in there, but then forgetting about it as they walk out the door. What they see when they see the results of it and they see this come to fruition at the end is that they actually did something of substance, and they're going to be very proud of that. And I think that's going to help them take that to the next level down the road when it comes to any of their education, because they understand the benefits of seeing the end product rather than just reading about it in the book.
Well, and whether it was my current students, like, for example, I had about 90 students in the classes that I taught through the middle of December. And so they heard the story and they saw the passion. And those kids alone donated close to $3,000 for the project, just those 90 students alone. And so, I reached I don't know how many former students that have reached out to me and said, this is an amazing thing. So these kids want to come, they want to give something back because they're worried about the environment. They want to give and be part of something bigger than themselves.
Sure.
And this has given them that opportunity.
Let's talk about the actual physics of that for a little bit, as some may not be aware or may not be familiar with solar power itself, but the panels are built and it uses that. But as you mentioned, I mean, if we have some cloudy days, the energy production goes down a little bit, maybe during some times of the season when we have a little less sun rays. But talk about the actual process of what this could do and the kind of energy it can produce.
The short process is that the sun produces bundles of energy that in the science community we call a photon,
sure.
Okay, which is just basically a bundle of energy. That's all it is. So the short version is that the solar panels are built with material that when that bundle of energy hits the solar panel, it excites an electron, which is one of the fundamental subatomic particles of the universe. And that electron gets enough energy that it basically jumps out of its normal state. And that's happening throughout this entire panel. And then you basically harness that excited electron and then use that to produce electricity.
Sure.
And so that's the short version, is that the electrons are sitting there minding their own business. All along comes the photon. Wow, here's a bundle of energy. It's like giving it an energy drink.
Sure.
And then it jumps up, and then you have the capacity to take that and then to produce electricity
and use it.
from.
Yes. And use it. Have you seen a progression in the technology with this over the years? I know that we've talked about the progression of either wind energy, nuclear energy, solar energy, and it's taken some while, but now we're starting to see it go a little bit more mainstream for the consumer. How efficient is this technology right now?
The efficiencies right now are about 25 to 30%. The efficiencies themselves have somewhat plateaued, but the reason that it's now become more mainstream is because the cost has come down so much. If you look at a graph of time versus cost, so the short version is that about 12 years ago, to install a solar panel system cost you about $9 per watt installed.
Okay.
Just using that as a benchmark.
Sure.
Okay. So then as you go forward, that cost each year has dropped. And so for schools, the break point on being cost efficient is about $2.50 a watt installed. This system at Mays High School is going to be at about $1.65 per watt installed.
Okay.
And so 5 years ago, I wouldn't have tackled this project because
wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it. Yeah, you'd feel good. Yeah, you could reduce carbon dioxide emissions, but financially, it doesn't pay.
Sure.
Whereas now, because the cost of solar panels has come down so much, then now it's a cost-effective system to look into.
But now there is the movement, whether it's going to happen or not, who knows, but the Kansas Corporation Commission talking about individuals with solar panels on their private homes that we potentially need to raise the utility rates for them because they need to pay their fair share into the system and jack up that rate. What would that do to you if that ends up happening?
I spent, ironically, last night going through my electrical bills. And there's only been 2 months out of the past 12 months when I have actually generated more electricity than I used.
Sure.
And so I was still charged the minimum monthly fee of $28 a month. I was still billed for the demand hours, 10, 11, whatever that is. Even though I produced more electricity than I used, I still got charged for that.
Sure.
So for 10 months out of the year, I'm still buying electricity. It isn't like I'm a net producer of electricity for the utility companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so and I know the proposal was to raise that rates by 50%. If you did that, I would probably have to take my solar panels off because it would just not be cost effective. Now, with that said, if they would grandfather that in, and because I made my financial decision, and that's what it was. It was
Sure.
a financial decision.
Sure.
Based upon the idea that Kansas is a net metering state. And so I just think they would have a hard time justifying that, because if you portray me as saying, "Oh, I don't pay anything for my electricity." Yes, I do. My electrical bill in January was over $300. And so, yeah, there are some months in May through, September. Yeah, I don't consume a lot of electricity. I produce some, but there are other months where I'm a net consumer of it.
But you're paying for it every month, whether you use it or not.
Yes.
Already.
To a certain extent. Yeah, I reduced the amount. Basically, utility company looks and says, okay, Steenbergkamp, your solar panels produced 400 units of electricity. I consumed 500. Okay, we're going to bill you for 100. So, but I'm still being charged the minimum monthly rate. I'm still being charged for the demand hours. And so it isn't like I'm not paying for the infrastructure. And that's their argument. And I understand utilities companies have to make money.
Sure.
I'm not disputing that. But for me as a consumer, and also as far in terms of a bigger picture, to argue that you've in effect taken Kansas out of the solar panel equation, if this is what you're going to do, you are effectively going to kill an industry.
There it is. So that's Dan Bergkamp. He is the head of the physics department at Mays High School, working on the private project when it comes to the solar panels on top of Mays High School. So I think that it was great information. I appreciate him coming on the show very much so, and we appreciate him. We'll get another update. His goal is to be towards the end of the summer to have the entire fundraising, or at least $100,000. He's at $55,000 right now. If he can get the $100,000, then he can actually be able to start the project and then grow it as we need to from there. Got to take a break. When we come back, we'll get our local news update from Mr. Rick Everett himself, along with your thoughts and calls on that and more. Plus, remember, hour number 2, we're going to have a great guest at the kickoff 7 o'clock hour, Jonah Goldberg from National Review. It's going to be kind of a big deal. We'll talk with him when we come back in hour number 2 as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1. I cannot believe it. It's gone by way too fast, but appreciate you hanging out with us today. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink right here on the Voice of Reason. That's the way we roll. That's just what we do. And guess what? It's time for News with Rick. There it is. What's happening, sir?
Hey, good morning, Andy. Good morning, everyone. Authorities have determined that no charges will be filed in a fatal officer-involved shooting in southwest Kansas. Officers fatally shot 29-year-old Cristino Umana Garcia last October in rural Finney County. Garden City Police Chief Michael Utes said yesterday that they found officers did not violate local policies and procedures, federal law, or state law. The Haskell County Attorney says all reports from the Kansas Bureau of Investigation and video footage from the case showed no charges were warranted against the 2 officers involved in the shooting. Authorities say all available evidence suggests that both officers involved reasonably believed that they were in danger when they fired the shots. Kansas Secretary of State Chris Kobach urging the National Rifle Association to bring its annual convention to Kansas.
Yeah, baby.
The Kansas City Star reports that the Republican gubernatorial candidate tweeted over the weekend that he's reached out to the NRA to urge the group to bring the gathering to Kansas.
Welcome home.
A new government report estimates that nearly half of the winter wheat crop in Kansas is struggling for lack of adequate moisture. The National Ag Statistics Service reported yesterday that 49% of the wheat across the state is in poor to very poor condition. It rated the remaining crop as 39% fair, 11% good, and 1% excellent. That assessment comes amid estimates that topsoil moisture supplies are running short to very short across 74% of the state. And a Kansas couple celebrating after becoming parents to a rare set of identical triplets.
Wow.
Yes.
Triplets.
Identical, no doubt. That would be confusing. Dr. Josh Petrikin says the boys are doing wonderfully while under observation in Truman Medical Center's neonatal intensive care unit in Kansas City, Missouri. Researchers say identical triplets only occur about once per 20 to 30 million deliveries. The boys were born Thursday, and until recently, that family only had one child.
What do you think they should name them?
Can you imagine going from 1 to 4 and 3 of them all look the same?
3 of them all. How do you name them?
Now, my mom had trouble with just 3 of us. I mean, and it was boy, boy, girl, and still, when she would get angry, she couldn't remember which one she was yelling at.
Oh, exactly, and all the names kind of blend together. And then
Rick, Mary, Bill, you know who I'm talking to.
Pretty soon it's going to be, hey, you, get over here. I'm ready for it. If you had trouble, what would you name them?
Thing 1,
Thing 2, and Thing 3.
That's the news. I'm out of here.
And that's the news.
Appreciate that very much. Here's the question of the day. What would you name your triplets, identical triplets, if you ended up having them? That would be fun to watch as those kids running around. They could play with their parents so much and be able to pull that kind of shenanigans. Appreciate that very much. Got to take a break at the top of the hour. When we come back, I am excited. As you know, or as you may know, William F. Buckley, a solid conservative, a solid legend in the conservative movement, the creator of National Review, a best-selling author, someone who has done great work for the conservative movement, died back in 2007. It's been 10 years now. Jonah Goldberg, one of the great writers for National Review, will be joining us in hour number 2 to talk about today doing some half-day ceremonies throughout the different cities in the country to talk about William F. Buckley and what the National Review is doing now and some of the current events happening with that. So I'm really, really, really excited to have Jonah Goldberg on the show coming up in just a little bit. Plus, don't miss it in the 8 o'clock hour, hour number 3. We're going to be having Tyler Tannahill. He is one of the Republican candidates for the 2nd Congressional District. He's also the one giving away the AR-15 with his campaign. We'll talk with him coming up in hour number 3. Now that we're getting into a little bit more of election cycle, there is a laundry list, a great list of Republicans running for that 2nd Congressional District, and I'm really excited. We will eventually be talking with each and every one of them, along with the Democrats, if we get an opportunity to do so. I'm still waiting for a Democratic candidate to come on the show. Not very many have done so. Maybe 1 or 2, but not very many have actually wanted to come on the show. So we'll try and get them on the best that we can as time allows throughout the coming weeks. But let's go ahead and wrap up. Get ready for Jonah Goldberg when we come back. Your show, as always, it's a Tuesday. Let's make it a great one, shall we? Today is our day to do something great. And this is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason, baby. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here for hour number 2.
It's time for Reason.
But what else can we do? You and I, the parents. I don't have a kid in school yet. She's 3. She will be going to school very, very soon. Am I going to have to be worried about taking her to school every single day? Am I going to have to be worried about someone wanting to harm her at an elementary school? And as we talk about legislation, as we talk about gun safety programs, as we talk about these things that the government can do to some degree, at the end of the day, it's you and I.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Yeah, welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 2. The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Tuesday. Great to have you along. Also simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Happy Tuesday. Great to have you with us. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, social media is open for you any way you want to on Facebook, on Twitter, at Hoosier Reason. The Facebook Live feed is rolling as well. If you want to check that out, just facebook.com/1480 KQAM. Let's get right into it. I'm really excited about our next guest. As you know, or as you may know or may not know, that 10 years ago, William F. Buckley was a solid conservative individual. He advanced conservative agendas for a long, long time, ended up passing away 10 years ago. Today is the day that we remember that, as we have different ways to recognize and learn about what he's done throughout the nation today. And today, on the phone with us to be able to talk about that and more, he is with the National Review. He's a senior at the National Review, best-selling author. He's a columnist with the National Review Institute. He's a contributor to USA Today. He's a contributor to Fox News. He's all over the board. I've been a big fan of his for a really, really long time. Jonah Goldberg is on the line with us. Jonah, how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate very much you coming on the show today. What a day it's going to be today with the remembrance of William F. Buckley, what he's done for the conservative movement, and how we can learn from what he did back then for us to be able to advance conservatism today. Today's a really special day for you.
It is. It was 10 years ago today that Bill passed away, and I was lucky enough actually to get to know William F. Buckley before he died. I wouldn't say we were close or anything like that, but there are these moments where once he goes, no one who works at National Review going forward will ever have known him. It's one of these. He's one of these great figures of the 20th century, and I count myself very lucky that I got to know him as well as I did. And we live in a moment where conservatism has changed a lot. I don't think necessarily for the better since Bill left. A lot of what Bill stood for was fearlessly, forthrightly, humorously, intelligently, and civilly going after his ideological opponents. Mm-hmm. And these days, it's not just a problem on the right. It's really a problem. All this is a problem downstream of the problems with our culture and our politics. But these days, shouting and insults and just going to annoy the other side has replaced any semblance of actual sort of civil discourse or even pointed but serious disagreements.
Sure.
Instead it's just soundbite versus soundbite.
It's substance. I mean, we're lacking substance right now. I've seen the different memes on social media it says that we're overloaded with information. We're lacking leadership and we're lacking guidance on how to actually adapt to that information, because right now you can search anything online, that's fine, but unless you actually have some context to it and some substance to back it up, then it's really essentially useless. And with society today, especially with the young generation, which, I'm 29, I'm a millennial myself. I'm trying to go through that myself as well. So I was on the tail end. I got to read about William F. Buckley. I didn't actually get to listen to a whole lot of it myself, but yeah. It's a troubling time because, as you mentioned, we're not having a serious dialogue from both ends, and then we become more fringe on both ends. We become to the point where we don't even want to hear the opposition, and that's not healthy for a society.
No, that's right. Look, the way I always put it is we're drowning in information, but we're starving for knowledge. Mm-hmm. And you have this situation. Social media sort of makes everything worse. And I say that as somebody with, 280-something thousand Twitter followers, and I like social media. I like Twitter. But so much of cable news, Twitter, everything is, geared around this idea that if the other side hates it, it must be worth saying. And, and the highest principle for a lot of people, particularly a bunch of people younger than me on the right, is if you can say your tears are delicious about something, mm-hmm. It's worth doing. And when I talk to college students, which I do pretty often, I always say to them, young conservative activists, fighting political correctness is really good and important, and you should do it. But just because being rude is un-PC is not an argument for rudeness. If you need to be rude, it's got to have a really good point.
Sure.
Right? It can't just be, oh, look at me, I'm getting attention, I'm offending people. You can offend wrong people the wrong way.
Sure.
And that's sort of been lost in this equation. I think it's that, and that thinking has taken over so much of things like CPAC and so much of the sort of online world of conservative debate.
Sure. Was it that way back in the day when William F. Buckley was fighting for conservatism at the time as well? We saw, he lived during the time when there were the protests during the 70s, when we had the revolutions, when we had the things going on, and it was a very interesting time as well, and a lot of people at that time felt offended. Now the activists today feel like they're fighting that same type of fight, but is it really the same type of scenario?
I think the times have changed. You got to remember, times have changed for the better.
Sure.
This is one of the arguments that people made for Donald Trump, is that conservatives haven't conserved anything, blah, 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 blah. I get what they're talking about, and there are a lot of social issues that have gone the wrong way over the last 30 years. But people forget, when Donald Trump talked about how America is plagued by crime and this American carnage must stop, we were at 20, 30-year historic lows in crime. Our cities are safer. I grew up in New York City in the 1970s in a neighborhood where Death Wish, the movie, the Charles Bronson movie, was set. Now New York City, you can literally walk, thanks to conservative governance by Rudy Giuliani, you can walk from one end of Manhattan Island to the other at 3 a.m. drunk, and the chances of being mugged are very, very small to almost non-existent. And so there's been a lot of progress. Back, in California, in I think 68 or 69, there was something like 130 bombings across the state. You had, militants and Black Panthers and protests and domestic terrorism from the Weather Underground all around. And things just aren't that bad now. Mm-hmm. But they feel bad because of the way we live, the way civil society has eroded. And yeah, Bill gave as good as he got, and he was a fighter. But one of the great contributions that Bill made back in those days was the left was desperate to make the segregationist governor of Alabama, George Wallace, the face of American conservatism.
Sure.
And he was he appealed to this sort of Yahoo racist kind of slice of American conservative right-wing populism. And Bill comes out of, this sort of very intellectual, very erudite. He could beat John Kenneth Galbraith and Norman Mailer and Gore Vidal in debates on their own terms. And it was this great source of sort of self-esteem and confidence for American conservatives who are being told constantly that they're just a bunch of wahoos and fools, that you can be a true intellectual, a true charming intellectual, a funny raconteur, and still hold these conservative views. And that was one of the things that saved the conservative movement from descending into crankery. Mm-hmm. Now anybody who talks like an intellectual, you hear the safeties on rifles clicking all over the place because they don't want to hear it. They just want to hear the Yahoo stuff, or at least a lot of people do. And I think that's a sad commentary on sort of where we are. And don't get me wrong, I've done plenty of my own smash mouth, hardcore, conservative, duke it out stuff. And there's a place for some of that, but it's the problem is just the ingredients in the cocktail have gotten out of whack.
Well, I mean, how much do you think the media contributes to that as well with the mainstream? I mean, with the 24-hour news cycle that goes along trying to feed on not substantial issues or even trying to demonize the conservative movement as much as it does, both for Donald Trump and for just the average mainstream conservative? I mean, how much does the media play a role in this?
I mean, media plays an enormous role. There are producers at all of the networks, right? All the daily sort of line producers at the networks, they look at their ratings in 15-minute increments. Mm-hmm. And they are convinced, I think wrongly, but they are convinced that if they don't continuously feed the base, their core viewership, what it already believes and what it already knows, that they'll dip in ratings. And so this creates a sort of centrifugal force that polarizes the conversation even more. Plus, TV in general makes people stupid. And I say this as a former television producer. I've been a Fox News contributor for 6 years, something like that. Before that, I was at CNN. If all you do is get your news from television, you are not getting a nutritious news diet, because TV is fundamentally an entertainment medium. It is about passion and emotion and pitting people against each other and personalities. And people don't want, or at least the TV at this stage doesn't really lend itself to someone from side A saying to someone from side B, you make a good point. Mm-hmm. That's not what people want to hear, and or at least that's not what the producers want to hear.
Sure.
And so it's, George Orwell had this great line where he says, a man can feel himself a failure and take to drink and become all the more of a failure because he drinks.
Sure.
Yeah. That's a dynamic everywhere.
No, absolutely. We're talking with Jonah Goldberg from the National Review. Talk about the event that's happening today. As you mentioned, 10 years of the passing from William F. Buckley, and we're remembering him today. What are you guys working on throughout the country?
So we got, if people go to the National Review Institute website, which is just NRI or nrinstitute.org, you can see that we're going to have events We're having an event today in Washington. I think that's actually sold out, but I think it's going to be on C-SPAN. Check your listings. And then we're going to be in Washington March 1st. We're going to be in Houston, San Francisco, Newport Beach, Chicago, and there may be more dates on the way. If you go to the site, you can find them out. And we're going to do events, seminars, day-long conferences, talks about William F. Buckley, the state of conservatism. There'll be debates, and it's a great way to sort of keep the memory of him still alive.
I love it. We're talking with Jonah Goldberg. Last question before we let you go. I know you're a busy guy, but for all the listeners that always ask the question, what can we do next? How can we continue to fight this fight the right way and be able to advance conservatism? What would you give them as advice on how we in Wichita, Kansas, and the South Central Kansas area can continue on with that fight of conservatism?
Oh, it's more about championing an attitude.
Sure.
Gratitude. Be grateful for this country. Gratitude opens your heart. Trying to persuade other people to be grateful for this country and what it has provided for everybody and for the world is the starting point of understanding conservatism. Because the whole point of conservatism is to be grateful for what you have and for what this country is. And those things that you're grateful for, you want to conserve.
That's what it is. Jonah Goldberg, I appreciate it, my friend. As I mentioned, I've been a fan for a long time. I appreciate you coming on the show very much so. I'd love to get you back on at a later time.
Great, I'd love to. Thanks, man. I got a book coming out in April. I'll be on.
Oh yes, we'll get you on definitely for your book in April. Can you give us a little blurb, a little teaser of it?
Oh, it's got the cheeriest title ever. It's The Suicide of the West.
I love it. I love it. We'll get you back on in April to be able to talk about that book and more. Jonah Goldberg right there. I appreciate it very much. Got to take a break. 19 minutes past the hour. We'll get your thoughts and calls when we come back. It is the Voice of Reason.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today on a Tuesday, broadcasting right here on the Big Talker, KQAM, 25 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, thanks again to Jonah Goldberg. How cool is that? Getting Jonah Goldberg from the National Review on the program, being able to talk about William F. Buckley, the 10 years since his passing, and events all across the country. You can check out NR Institute, nationalreviewinstitute.com, and you can see some of the information on there. We'll get Jonah Goldberg back on the program when he comes out with his book in just a few months, talking about conservatism in that sense. And he's absolutely right. We lack substance. Look, I don't know if you're aware or not, but I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I am an observer. I try and look up as much knowledge as I possibly can. I try and learn as much as I possibly can, but I'm not a smart guy. I dropped out of college, for crying out loud, which I don't know if that's saying much in today's society, but I didn't deal with it. I'm not a bookworm, really. I love reading books, but I got to do it on my own accord and what I want to study, and opposed to being forced to do it in that way and being taught and having someone tell me how the world turns. I'm an observer. And today, for whatever reason, we have a society where we just want to question everything without actually looking up details and facts. And it ties in with what we had, the conversation we had in the first hour, when it comes to individuals wanting to question their own identities. Just the gender identity thing is the most absurd deal. I have some audio clips, and I want to play them probably in hour number 3. We don't have time right now. But it was an interesting debate with a professor from the Department of Diversity talking about this, and then talking with a professor on evolutionary biology, a scientist learning about the adaptation of animals and genetics throughout history and how animals have evolved in that sense, and saying that if we're questioning gender, then we're completely nuts and we don't have any realm of reality or sense of reality in any way, shape, or form. It's just not going to happen. And when we go to that extreme, then it falls into exactly what Jonah Goldberg just mentioned, the fact that we don't have a substantial dialogue anymore. It's about saying something extreme. It's about holding on to an extremist view, a purist view, and then if anybody disagrees with that, then you shut them out, you create some kind of witty response to them, you poke fun at them, but you never have a dialogue anymore. That's why I love having a dialogue on the show. If someone disagrees with me on this show, you're more than welcome to call in, and as long as time allows without a commercial break, I will hold you on for a 10-minute segment debating you. because I want to not only defend my position, but have you defend your position to make sure that we're actually doing something substantial. No more wittiness, no more one-line zingers, no more. That's why I'm not a fan of Twitter. The 160-character tweet where you're all of a sudden feel like an expert on an issue when you absolutely know nothing about an issue. I don't like it anymore. 316-7 actually advancing conservatism the way that we need to advance conservatism. An ideology, not the party line bickering, but an actual ideology that makes society a better place to live in. 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, sir. Drew.
Hey, good morning, Drew. How are you?
Doing great.
Good.
Hey, what you just described is what William F Buckley worked against, and that was what Saul Alinsky promoted, which was don't engage, don't have conversation, ridicule, debate,
Sure.
refuse to engage. So, that is exactly the tradition of William F Buckley. So.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's true. And right now, we have, unfortunately, even for the conservative movement in many ways, that we, not all of it, but in many ways, we have fallen into the Saul Alinsky way of doing the witty one-line zingers and the arguments that are unsubstantial. And we've fallen into that realm to where it's hard for us to break out of it, because when we do, then no one's there to engage us. And everybody wants to sink down that low. So even the conservatives have said, yeah, we love William F. Buckley with the conservative movement, but now we're going to use the style of Saul Alinsky to debate and argue on societal issues, and that's not helping us.
That's because we used to have debate. We used to have conversation, and now the left does not want conversation. They want conformity.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, by the way, Andy, one other thing that you are well in the shadow of Saul Alinsky for. In the 70s, Saul Alinsky did an interview with Playboy called "What's Smart," where he talked about it. It may have been the 60s even, where he talked about the fact that what was smart was being an expert in your field, knowing everything you could.
Sure.
We went back later in the 80s and revised that article, and it's in it he saw the coming of the information wave, the information war, and he revised that. And so now I think you have followed well in his footsteps. So he said, what's smart now is not knowing everything, but knowing how to find it.
I agree. Drew, I appreciate that very much. Got to take a break, but you're right. We may not be the experts in our field, but we know how to get the information, how to digest it, how to filter through the hashtag fake news and be able to make a substantial opinion that's based on fact and that's based on substance, not based on a 160-character tweet. Lots more coming up on the show. Stay tuned.
It's time for your daily dose of reason.
Are you insane?
I don't know. Just ignore him.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Oh, making it happen today. It is a Tuesday. It's great to have you along today, broadcasting right here on the Big Talker, KQAM, 36 minutes past the hour. And thanks again to Jonah Goldberg from the National Review joining us at the top of the hour. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We got a lot to get to today coming up in the kickoff of hour number 3. We got Tyler Tannahill. He is one of the Republican candidates for the 2nd Congressional District, also the one giving away the AR-15 for the campaign that has gotten a lot of heat. He was on CNN just a few days ago trying to debate that as they were trying to catch him up on that one. That evil, terrible jerk. So we'll talk to him about him and his campaign coming up in just a little bit as well. Also, we got a special guest in studio we're going to get to in just a minute, as we're going to start a weekly guest or a weekly update from this individual that we're going to do in just a minute. But first, let's go to the phone, shall we? 721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, what's going on, sir? How are you?
Yeah, great program. Jonah Goldberg is one of my favorites.
Absolutely. Solid conservative.
Talking about William F. Buckley, I sat by him on a plane ride from Phoenix to Denver. I was going up there to a military electronics school at Lowry, and I sat next to him. What a interesting person.
Wow, I can only imagine. I've read his stuff for a really long time, and he is both William F Buckley and Jonah Goldberg. I've enjoyed learning and reading about them, and they are so smart when it comes to how to advance the conservative movement. That it would have been really cool to sit down and chat with them.
Yeah, you can feel it as he's talking to you. He's thinking exactly. He's very articulate in what comes out of his mouth.
Sure.
I mean, it's you can just see that thought process just going as that stuff's flowing out. But that was the greatest thing that, to me, that's where I really got it inducted into conservatism.
Absolutely. I love it. Ron, I appreciate it very much, my friend. That's really cool. That's a great story, learning about being able to sit and chat with one of those guys. That's definitely a unique experience. It's that time. This is the first time. It's going to be a weekly deal. But as you know, today we're going to get a city council meeting, and with us here in studio, it's time for our city update.
We built this city.
There it is, our city update. Mr. Brian Fry, in studio, city council member. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I get intro music.
We got an intro and everything for you.
Plus, I have to follow Jonah Goldberg. I mean, really?
You got some big shoes to fill today.
I don't know if I can carry that water.
That's
wow.
right. No, we appreciate you coming in. We want to start off this with a weekly update. You guys have your city council meeting every Tuesday.
Yep.
And we figured what better way than to have you come on each Tuesday morning and tease about maybe what happened with the meeting last week, and if anybody wants to talk about a specific issue this week, that give them forewarning to be able to show up and do that.
You bet. Well, today's actually what we call a consent meeting, the fourth Tuesday of every month. It's really just a consent vote and a workshop.
Sure.
So they're a little lighter on the agenda today than normal.
Sure.
But we've been going gangbusters since the first of the year. It's just been outstanding. All the great things that are happening, absolutely. The Wichita is definitely on a high trajectory, and things are moving really fast.
Sure, absolutely. I wanted to do a little bit extended one this time, being the first one to kind of set that stage, because we haven't talked to you guys really since the election last year. We've talked to a couple of the city council members. Brandon Johnson's come in after his election. We gave him congratulations on that. But the kickoff 2018, as you mentioned, has been hot and heavy. We've seen new industries coming in, Spirit Aero Systems announcing massive amounts of money being sunk in here. We can see potentially, hopefully, a lot of people coming to the area, and it's going to be a really exciting year for you guys.
It really is. Certainly the aviation manufacturing is climbing. We've got great jobs. I mean, that's a fantastic problem to have, right?
Absolutely.
Most communities would just be thrilled with the type of opportunities that we have right now. Spirit's hiring, Cessna's hiring, Bombardier's hiring. So, I mean, yes, we want to diversify our economy and have some other industries, but the aviation is what carries our water.
Sure.
And that's what our bell cow, and it's going great guns right now. And it's just not those three companies, it's all of the other aviation-related companies. We just had two this week. Wichita Sheet Metal is outperforming what they said they would do 5 years ago.
Sure.
5 years ago, they said they were going to have jobs at $31,000. They're paying $51,000 a year now for jobs at Wichita Sheet Metal. And so, I mean, that type of thing is happening all across the city. I think we're going to start seeing a big construction boom in housing. And it's not going to just be duplexes and apartments. I think you're going to start to see some single-family residential come back big time.
Sure. That's exactly what we need. I watched a trend just about a month or so, a few weeks ago, and U-Haul migration across the country. They came out with their end-of-the-year report. Kansas was number 36 on that list. We were pretty low, and I'm assuming for what little bit we did get, that Wichita would be kind of the heart of that, being the biggest city in the area. So this type of innovation coming here, hopefully we can go up a little bit on that list for people wanting to say Kansas is the place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're having to recruit outside of the Wichita area now to get people to come here because of those jobs that we have available.
Sure.
It's a big crunch right now, and making sure that they're going to be staffed up to meet the demand. Tom Gentile at Spirit talked about the growth of commercial aviation and gave us some outstanding numbers that just tells us this is going to be a long cycle. This isn't just some short flash in the pan.
Sure.
This is going to be the trend for a while, and that creates other opportunities, again, with housing and retail and services. I mean, you're seeing that explode in downtown right now, too. So,
Well, and to go along with that, I mean, let's look at 2018 on some of the ideas that you guys have that may have been brought up. But other than just the innovation of people coming here, but the expansion of the city itself with wanting to renovate downtown or wanting to expand the city limits, I mean, how's that going to look for the year?
So really the key is quality of space. Making sure that we have a community that is really attractive, not only for the people that live here, but for those people that we want to move here. You know, we've got the jobs. Now we got to make sure that we've got for that non-job time. You know, what are you going to do? How are you going to keep your family entertained? What are you going to do to enhance yourself culturally?
Sure.
You know, we've got to have those other spaces and places to make this an extremely attractive to not only live, but also recruit people here to live.
Absolutely. For the first couple months, I guess the first month and a half, 2 months that you guys have had the city council meetings, what have been some of the concerns from the public that may have come to you and said, hey, I want to see you guys address this, or hey, we need to look at this? What's been kind of the hot topic so far for the first 2 months of the year?
Well, certainly the tragedy that we had with Andrew Finch. I mean, that's just, you know, we're still dealing with that. We're still waiting for the DA to issue their report, for the KBI to issue their report. It's taking too long, in my opinion. But again, I want it to be done right, and try to answer as many questions as possible. But that is one that we need to get, you know, figured out really fast.
And some closure.
Yes, absolutely.
What's your thoughts on, I mean, no, this is a legislative issue at the state, but their new initiative that the House passed wanting to make a little bit more transparency when it came to the body cams of the police for instances like this, that the families and that those affected can view some of those video footages and see actually what happened.
Absolutely. You know, I want it to be as transparent as possible. I mean, that's why we got the cameras, right? Because we want to make sure that our officers are doing what's expected and that there's evidence to support that. And having that footage available as soon as it's possible. You know, certainly that they've got to do their investigation and how far they release that. Maybe it's just the immediate family so that they can have some sense of closure, and then it gets released wider to the media and so forth. But we have that technology, we have that opportunity. We need to make full use of it.
Sure. Well, and I like the idea of keeping it a little more contained during the investigation. Right. Maybe open it up to the media and to the general public after it's all said and done. But I'm with you there. I mean, at least maybe those affected could see something just to kind of be on the same page. To go along, yeah,
and absolutely. What we've already found is a lot of those lawsuits and those complaints have really shrunk.
Sure.
Because of the body cameras now.
Sure.
You know, before when you didn't have it, people were like, oh, well, he did this or this is what happened. And, you know, you really had no way to refute that. Now with the cameras, a lot of those complaints and arguments are not happening because they know there's evidence. So it has had a twofold effect. But
sure. How's the new motorcycle cops going in the area? Is that going relatively well? Can they reimburse some speeding tickets?
Not even for me, you know. No, I mean, you know, I am definitely concerned about the amount of speeding and red lights. There isn't a day go by that I don't see someone run a red light.
Sure.
Right? And so the motorcycle patrol is there to help enforcement. It's not there just to generate revenue. It's there to keep our roads safer. The motorcycle patrol can get into tighter spaces. They can respond quicker and be able to do what they need to do, and that's enforce traffic. And I think they're doing that.
Sure. I saw something else that went along with that as well on the flashing signs that it sounds like maybe popping up saying, hey, make sure this area, be careful, make sure to slow down, remember to fasten your seatbelt. Is that something that you've already started or is going to be happening soon?
No, I've seen more of those out in the county, really.
Okay.
I was just talking to staff the other day about this at 45th North and Tyler. There's a stop sign that's surrounded by flashing red lights because it's really kind of out in the middle of nowhere. There's no other lights.
Sure.
It's just you come across it real fast, and the cross traffic doesn't stop. And I said, those are kind of neat. Can we get more of those? And well, those are actually county lights. And I'm like, okay, but you know, we have one on a couple of our flyovers as you come off, and you know, warning you of street lights or stop lights about ready to be in front of you.
Sure.
We've got them at some of our pedestrian crosswalks. Where we can make it safer for people to cross major thoroughfares. So, it's new technology, and, if we can use it, let's do it. It makes it safer.
Little by little.
Yep.
As you mentioned, this week going to be a little bit slower today at the city council meeting, but remind everybody, because I'm really excited, and I appreciate you wanting to do this each week with me.
Absolutely.
To be able to get this information out. But where are the city council meetings held, and how can people go to those if they want to today?
So council meetings are every Tuesday at 9 a.m. at City Hall, which is central in Maine.
Okay.
If you want to attend, it's free and open to the public. Agendas are posted on wichita.gov, so you can see what's going to be on. Typically, most meetings last about an hour and a half to 2 hours. Okay. They are a business meeting. We're doing the business of the city of Wichita.
Sure.
But there is opportunity for public engagement and for public speaking and commenting on items. And on the fourth Tuesday of every month, we have a shortened version. It's a consent agenda and usually a workshop that follows that. And then on Fridays, we have agenda review where we kind of go over what's going to be at the business meeting. Mm-hmm. So there's always something going on. In fact, tomorrow I got to go to Topeka. We're hosting a luncheon for our South Central delegation. So I'm going to go up there and make nice with all of our area legislators.
Sure.
In fact, they've been very kind to us. Just last week, the House passed our Plates for Parks program, which is the Wichita flag license plate. So,
very good.
Now we're waiting on the Senate, but thank you, Kansas House, for passing that. And now we get the Senate. Hopefully they'll take it up this week, and then we'll have Wichita flag license plates all over the city.
That would be fun to see.
Yeah,
that'd be fun to see everybody showing their pride when it comes to that flag. Very good. Brian Fry, City Council member for the city of Wichita. If anybody wants to go to that, they're more than welcome to do so this week. As you mentioned, a little bit slower this week, but next week it'll kind of pick up a little bit more.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Very good. We'll
big
get
agenda.
Big agenda. We'll catch up with you again next
Absolutely.
Tuesday. Appreciate it very much. 48 minutes past the hour. Let's take a break here. Wrapping up hour number 2. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Say what? Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, making it happen today on a Tuesday. That's just the way we roll. Coming up in hour number 3, Tyler Tannahill, Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, going to join us. Also giving away the AR-15 for his campaign. We'll get an update on that one. But first, it's time for Rick with News.
And it's time for some good news.
Okay, here we go, people.
What's happening, sir?
Well, lots of wonderful things.
You like chasing a turkey out there? What are you doing?
No, I saw it was weird. I just saw an emergency vehicle kind of like going the wrong way down the the on-ramp to Kellogg off Mays Road, but he was going
He was going down the up ramp.
Anyway, more to come.
More to come on that one. And in latest news, EMS gets, goes wrong direction.
Good morning, Andy. The 26-year-old stepmother of a missing Wichita 5-year-old now officially criminally charged with endangering a child. 26-year-old Emily Glass, the stepmother of Lucas Hernandez, charged yesterday and will continue to be held on a $50,000 bond. She said during a brief court hearing that she would hire her own attorney before her next court appearance on March 13th. Meanwhile, Wichita police searched a new location yesterday for 5-year-old Lucas Hernandez. KSN says the department said they received new tips over the weekend, and yesterday police searched at Cottonwood Park, just northeast of Harry and Woodlawn. You know those annoying mailers that you get in the mail from car dealerships that, they have a key attached to them, and this key could win you the new car?
Yeah.
Or come in and bring this to the dealership, and you may have won $1 gazillion or something like that.
I look forward to those all the time.
Well, 3 Kansas auto dealerships have now been fined for using prize notification mailings that did not comply with state law.
Uh-oh.
Attorney General Derek Schmidt said that the Lewis Auto Plaza in Topeka, the Lewis Automotive Group in Hayes, and Womack Sunshine Ford in Concordia each were fined for violating the prize notification statute.
Now, what kind of statute did they violate? Is it like where none of the keys actually worked? Like, try again.
Well, it says that the prize notifications failed to disclose to consumers the value of the prize and the odds of winning the prize, listing in the manner required by law.
Well, that's a bummer. See, I never knew if I'd get one of those and try if the key would not open for any of them and everybody just kind of lost, but they got you in the door, or if all the doors opened for all the keys and be like, hey, you won it, now you have to finance it, kind of thing. I don't know. I've never tried it, so I didn't know how that worked.
Mom always said, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
It probably is sometimes. But, Wheel of Fortune has changed my thinking on that.
Well, there's that. Okay, now, last week we talked about emojis. Remember the poop? We talked about the poop emoji.
Yeah. See?
Okay, well.
Taking the show to new levels.
After an outcry, the organization that controls the release of emojis has added 2 more legs to the forthcoming lobster emoji to make it correct. Yes, the Portland Press Herald reports that soon after the Unicode Consortium released proposed images of 157 new emojis to be made available this year, Maine residents got hacked off at the fact that the lobster emoji's 8 legs. Did you catch that? The lobster emoji's 8 legs. Lobsters have 10. Okay. So Emojipedia chief emoji officer Jeremy Burge wrote that the consortium had heard people's complaints and is now releasing updated designs for the lobster emoji, which will now have 10 legs alongside the new skateboard and... fasten your seatbelts for this one, the DNA emoji. Now, I don't even want to know what the DNA emoji might end up looking like.
The DNA emoji, wow.
That's the news.
There you go.
I'm out of here.
That's the news right there.
That's the news.
That's an interesting concept right there. Apparently, we need to have an emoji for everything. I am beginning to believe more and more the fact that when we have the caveman's writing on the wall, now we've de-evolved back to that level. Emoji for everything, even I don't know what the DNA emoji would be used for. You are so, maybe it's a parent tweeting their kids, you're so my #DNA. Not sure why I needed to feel to send that to my kid, but you know what? I don't know. Maybe when she gets a phone, I'll figure that out. Hour number 3 coming up in a minute here. Tyler Tannahill, Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, going to be joining us. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay tuned.
It's time for Reason.
But what else can we do? You and I, the parents. I don't have a kid in school yet. She's 3. She will be going to school very, very soon. Am I going to have to be worried about taking her to school every single day? Am I going to have to be worried about someone wanting to harm her at an elementary school? And as we talk about legislation, as we talk about gun safety programs, as we talk about these things that the government can do to some degree, at the end of the day, it's you and I.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into The Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM, along with simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. Good Tuesday morning. Welcome aboard. It's great to have you along today on the best day of the week. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. Right here on The Voice of Reason, getting you started, setting the tone for you on a daily basis. 8 minutes past the hour. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, you can shoot me a message all over social media, on Facebook, on Twitter. The Facebook Live feed is rolling, and I have to read one of the comments that just came in over the break that, and it's only on one of my screens over here. I cannot believe, Andy, you haven't bought your phone a phone yet for your daughter. What kind of person are you? What kind of parent are you? Obviously being sarcastic in that sense, but I've never gotten the whole idea of giving your 3-year-old, 4-year-old kid in elementary school, not even in elementary school yet, a smartphone. I saw when I was in high school, and my dad was actually at a short time was a bus driver, so we would ride with him once in a while, and I would sit in the bus, and while in high school we were at the elementary school watching the little kids get on the buses to make sure everything was going smooth, and I would watch these 6- and 7-year-old kids with earbuds in, makeup all over their face, with pierced ears having a smartphone as they're playing their music as they're walking to the school bus. As a 6-year-old, are you kidding me? Yeah, not going to happen. My child will not get a phone, for one, until she starts driving in high school. Number 2, she will get a gun before she gets a phone. And I mean that sincerely. It is not a joke. There was actually a gun store. I don't know if they do this in Kansas, but there's actually a gun store in Colorado that I loved. And if I was still living there, I would have done this for her 3rd birthday, because at the gun range, at the store/range, they would allow up to 3-year-olds to be able to shoot an AR-15. And I was so excited because I wanted to have her 3rd birthday at this range to have her shoot an AR-15 for the first time on her 3rd birthday. That would have been me. So that's going to happen soon. And we are excited to actually make that happen. Let's get to our guest, shall we? And actually, speaking of the AR-15, he's giving one away for his campaign. You still have some time if you do want to register for that one. But he is one of the Republican candidates for the 2nd Congressional District. He's gotten a lot of heat and a lot of media attention for the fact that he's given away this gun. Mr. Tyler Tannahill on the line with us. Tyler, how are you this morning?
Hey, doing great, Andy. Thanks so much for having me on. How are you this morning?
I'm living the dream, my friend, every day. I appreciate you coming on. Would you allow your 3-year-old, would you go to the gun range and have her shoot, him or her shoot an AR-15 for their 3rd birthday? I think it'd be kind of exciting.
Yeah, it'd be a lot of fun. I love going to the range, love shooting. So I have an 11-month-old son, so he's not quite old enough to do that yet, but 3 years old, absolutely.
Hey, on the way there, my friend. It's only going to take a couple. It goes faster than you can imagine.
I'm looking forward to it. So he's adorable. He's a lot of fun. He hasn't started quite walking yet, but I'm ready for him to start running around, playing catch, stuff like that. So looking forward to the future.
Oh, it's a great time. I have to ask you, though, which I don't know how you're doing it, having a 11-month-old at home and campaigning, do you ever sleep?
Yes and no. So,
okay.
It's definitely busy, and it's March is coming up. We're going to kick in our phase 2 of our campaign, which means I'm going to be gone a lot more out in the district. So thankfully, my parents and my in-laws live about 40 minutes from Leavenworth.
Okay.
And we have been utilizing them very frequently. So my wife and I will owe them a very nice mini vacation, or at least a date night, when all this is said and done.
Something pretty special. I tell you what, yeah. It's a heck of a time with them being so young, but then you running for the election as well has got to be a lot. And I mean, how's the campaign going? You have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? I mean, you have 7 or 8 different Republicans in the race for the 2nd Congressional District right now. The crowd is filling up dramatically, along with 2 Democrats, a Libertarian, possibly an Independent that may jump in there. How's the campaign going so far for you?
We launched 2 months ago. And we were doing great. We're very happy with where we're at. We did an internal poll. I've got a 6-point lead. Money's coming in. We've got some excitement around the campaign. People are coming up and talking to me. I'm out talking to people. We've just ran a good campaign that puts me in front of people to ask them what their problems is, what their issues, kind of let me express my viewpoint on the limited role that government should have in our lives and how that can positively affect them. And it's going well. I think better than we had expected, just, so quickly, only 2 months after launch date. And for me personally, I'm really looking forward to March. I'm getting out behind the desk, and, I'm going to be putting the miles on the car, visiting every county and town we can in the district, and just meeting the people who I'm going to be representing, hopefully, in come January. So that's what I'm excited about, just meeting the people, finding out their issues, seeing how they truly are doing.
Sure. No, absolutely. Talk about your platform. Obviously, the Second Amendment is important to you, and with the AR-15 giveaway, which I did see the CNN interview, and that was quite entertaining as well, with them trying to be like, come on, RT, can't you just admit you're a heartless, SOB that just wants to give everybody guns? That was entertaining. But other than the Second Amendment, which obviously is important, but what other platform are you running on? What do you want to see if you get into Congress?
Yeah, so, I think Congress did a really good job with this recent tax cuts that they gave us, but there's 2 pillars to that. They're giving us the tax break, but we're still spending too much money. And if we keep spending too much money, eventually, Republicans will lose control of the House and the White House and the Senate, and they'll just raise the taxes on us to afford the spending that we're doing. So my big push is we've got to get our spending under control. That's a big, big issue. My personal passion is getting the next generation into D.C. I'll be 32 coming on Election Day. And let's not deal with the problems that my generation is going to face when I'm 60, 65, 70. Let's knock them out now. Let's have some foresight, look ahead when we talk about Social Security. Everyone talks about, oh, we're paying in a system that's not going to pay us out. Let's fix it now. Let's not wait. Let's do it now. When you look at foreign policy under the Obama administration, I wasn't a fan of it. I think we have, multiple generations of ground issues, particularly in the Middle East, of some of his policies. Let's fix it now. Let's not wait till it's a bigger issue.
What kind of how would you like to see that with Social Security? Would you like to see a transition to a privatized program? Would you like to see it maybe reformed to pay into your own quote unquote bank account for your Social Security as opposed to subsidizing somebody else on it? I mean, what kind of reform would you like to see if we had an opportunity to sit down and address it?
Yeah, this is a tough issue to tackle. I think people currently who are kind of counting on that, who are at that, 60 years old age, and they're kind of nearing towards retirement, I don't think we can touch that for that age group. But my age, I've got a long time till retirement. I am more than happy to be sitting down and looking at something, how President Bush ran on in his first campaign that talked about giving you more control of that later, and you put it in your own account, having you have the ability to, pick and choose where that investment goes. So I'm all for, giving people control of their money, their future, their outcome. But I don't want to make it seem like, if you're 62 years old and counting on that check, I don't want to go touch that.
Sure.
But the younger generation like myself, let's look into it. Absolutely.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm right there with you. I'm 29 myself, and that's an issue that's going to be concerning for our generation, especially, like you said, are we going to be able to receive that check when we're older, or are we going to have to figure out our own, which, I mean, we should be looking at our own ways anyways, but how many people actually get that done by the time that they're actually retired? Talk about the political field or the political atmosphere right now. I mean, obviously, other than just the primary that's going to be heated, but let's say you get into this seat and you're working with D.C., you're working with many of the Republicans, you're working with the President Trump administration, and there is that division even within the Republicans on whether we should try and obstruct President Trump, work along with them, and trying to get enough votes to actually do something substantial. How would you be able to work in that type of atmosphere?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first step is, we have to flip the House and Senate this next coming election. I think it's 24 seats that the Democrats are going after to kind of swing balance in the House. That's step one. When you control the House, Senate, and the White House as well, I think you can do. And my biggest disappointment with D.C. is we have an opportunity to make drastic change for the Republican Party. And we've done the tax cuts, which have been wonderful. But, people need to, in the Republican Party, sit down and make some meaningful change. People voted these people in office to promote Republican conservative values. And that's what we have to do. Now, with your question, if we lose the House, things are going to change drastically. We lose, a third of our power. So it's very important for people to show up and vote. For me personally, look, the Trump administration, he's got 3 more years. Once I'll be elected, if I am, 2 years left. No guarantee he's going to win re-election. Hope he does. We have a 2-year window to get a lot of things done on the Republican platform. People need to come together, put away their very small differences within the Republican Party to pass meaningful legislation for the people of the United States, because that's what they want. That's their demanding. We need to be the party that gets stuff done, not just the party of no.
How important is it right now to do not only the reform when it comes to the budgetary and tax rates and that sort of thing when it comes to the economy, but also doing the repeal on Obamacare and trying to get that? That may be done before you even get in, if you end up getting in, but if it's not, how important is that to be on the priority list?
It's like top priority. People ran on that and got elected and got their seat in D.C. just running on that single issue, and they haven't come through with it yet. It needs to get done. I don't know for sure. I don't have any inside information. I'm still, the outside candidate looking in. I'm more of a repeal and replace individual. All for repealing it, but we have to have a solution because, again, we can't just be the party of no. And I think they're having a hard time finding the answer of the replace aspect of it. So if you can't find the replace, let's repeal it and, force some tough conversations to get it done. And that's where I think it's at now. It is a tricky issue. Again, a lot of these issues are very tough and they're not easy. But, you can't run for Congress. You can't be a representative or a senator and just for easy issues. It's tough issues that we have to face.
Sure. That's very true. Last question on the policy-wise before we shift gears a little bit, but we're huge in agriculture in the state. Many members, both in the House and in the Senate, are part of the ag committees in the different chambers. Do you have any background in the agriculture side, or what would you like to see when it came to maybe the farm bills or the crop insurance debate or the farm bill itself, or anything related to the ag side?
Yeah, so we do have our ag policy that we're getting ready to launch publicly. It's pretty simple, let the Kansas farmer farm. President Trump's done a wonderful job of kind of deregulating a lot in that industry. A lot of farmers I'm talking to say, hey, that's wonderful. He's letting me actually farm, doing things that getting rid of the nonsense, regulations. Second, the big issue I'm hearing too is with trade. We have, NAFTA's pretty unpopular. If we get rid of NAFTA, we're still going to have to find really good trade policies for exports for the Kansas farmer into Canada and Mexico. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my big things I'm hearing from a lot of Kansas farmers. Have to protect that foreign trade and export.
Sure.
Third, I'm all about the next generation. So we, a lot of farmers I'm talking to are saying, hey, in the next 10, 15 years, we're going to be in trouble. The average age of the farmer is that retirement age. So how do we look into getting that person who is just graduated high school, trade school, or college who wants to transition into agriculture with the high cost of barrier to entry by, price of land and equipment? How do we look into that? And then lastly, we are looking into industrialized hemp, how that can be used in the Kansas economy. And does that tie into maybe, with the numbers I'm seeing, getting that younger generation into farming, because it is a cash-producing crop that can grow relatively easily on some poor quality land. That's what kind of all floating around with those. We haven't officially launched it, or it's not set in stone yet, but that's kind of the general, 3,000-foot view of what we're looking at. Personally, didn't come from an ag background. Both my grandparents left the family farm, but definitely would love and plan on being an advocate and a spokesman for the Kansas farmer. It's the backbone of the Kansas economy. And it's something we have to protect. We have to have that industry in Kansas to survive.
Sure. Very good. Tyler Tannahill, a Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. Last question before we let you go, but you do still have the raffle going on for the AR-15, which everybody, of course, has given you a bunch of crap about, because how dare you actually give it away after the shooting that happened in Florida. If people want to help contribute to the campaign, want to get more information on you, or maybe want to sign up for that raffle, how can they do so?
Yeah, the raffle's free. TylerTannahill.com. You'll see the banner that says AR-15 giveaway. If you'd love to look at some more issues, same place, TylerTannahill.com. And if you'd love to donate, which campaigns unfortunately do cost money, we'd love that as well. Either it's just a quick note of encouragement or some monetary, giving to the campaign. It's TylerTannahill.com/donate. So.
Very good. Well, Tyler, good luck to you, my friend. The primary is going to come up quicker than we can imagine in just a few months. For that, good luck to you. We'd love to get you back on beforehand. And if you do end up getting in that seat, we'd love to be able to reach out to you on the show.
Absolutely. You've got my contact information. Call me anytime.
Hey, very good. We'll get you back on here before the primaries again, along with the other candidates. Tyler Tannahill, Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. We got some calls on the line. Don't go anywhere. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
What do you say? Let's make it happen. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason, 27 minutes past the hour. Good Tuesday morning to you. Appreciate you hanging out with us very much today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Thanks again to Tyler Tannahill, Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District. Lynn Jenkins, as you know, is retiring, and that's the open and vacant for this election, and a good amount of Republicans joining that race. We'll talk to each and every one of them before the primary, but good luck to Tyler on his race on that one. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Hey, good morning, Jim. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great.
Good.
Listen, if you can't find a local dealer to take you and your child out, I know a few people, myself included, who'd be happy to go along, and we can give you and your child an hour or so of instruction and dry fire practice, and then we can give them a loaded a magazine load with one round and then one round again. And then if that goes well, we do 2 or 3 rounds, and then we can give them a 30-round magazine, and they can have fun shooting at quart water bottles, 30 yards away or something.
That would be fun. Now, I haven't done that in such a long time, and don't get me wrong, I miss.
We'll take you too.
Exactly. Well, and that's what I need to do. I mean, I used to go all the time to the shooting range and be able to go hunting and have a good time. I haven't done that in a while. Now, my 3-year-old has not shot anything yet, so I'm going to do the baby steps on her. We're going to start off with maybe the BB gun kind of soon, and then work up to even go to like a. I mean, my very first.
Start with the rules.
Exactly. You start with the rules.
Here's the thing too. Remember, KQAM as a sponsor, Home on the Range in Winfield.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And
no, we got some great different
you
gun.
need to here, and I don't know if you guys have sold them any time yet, but you need to go over and see Thunderbird Tactical over on just north of 96.
Another good one.
I have a problem. I like to say Greenwich Road, but I think here in Kansas it's Greenwich Road.
Greenwich Road, yes. Jim, I hate to cut you off, my friend. Got to take a break, but you're right. No, we have some really great ranges and shops in the area, and we do love partnering with them on KQAM. We do need to do something like that. That would be a blast. Maybe do a Voice of Reason shootout or something relatively soon. Get some listeners together. Have a little fun with that. What a blast that would be. Bottom of the hour news coming up. We'll wrap up the show. Get your thoughts and calls when we come back. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
Hoosier-holic?
Yeah, baby.
Call in now at 721-8255. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Yeah, welcome back into the Voice of Reason. As we're wrapping up the show today, it is open lines to you for the last half hour. We'd love to hear from you, whatever's on your mind. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, we are on social media all over the place as well. 36 minutes past the hour. Happy Tuesday morning to you. Thanks again to all of our guests. What a show it's been, too. With Jonah Goldberg from the National Review, to Brian Fry with the City Council, to Tyler Tannahill with the Republican candidate for the 2nd Congressional District, trying to get the information to you. You're not going to get it anywhere else. You're not going to get the in-depth discussion. You're not going to get the detail. You can do the little one hit and move on, but that's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. Remember what Jonah Goldberg said, is that in order for us to advance conservatism, we have to get away from the flashy, we have to get away from the 160-character tweet, we have to get away from the lack of substance movement to say, oh, there it is, end of story, and anybody that doesn't agree with me is an idiot. We can't do that. We have to have a dialogue and a discussion, and that's what we do right here on the show. 316-721-8255. I do want to shift gears just a bit, though. Away from the Second Amendment. I know a lot of people are very hot and heavy on the gun rights right now. I am as well. It's been a frustrating discussion. We had the CNN town hall that's been going on. We've had a lot of dialogue, quote unquote, but the reality is that right now we have individuals that say unless you are supporting and encouraging mass shootings, then you should just support the banning of AR-15s. And I don't want to have that conversation because that's not the case in any way, shape, or form. That's not true. That's not the reality. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So I do want to shift gears here in just a minute and talk about some other things for you along with your phone calls as well. Let's go to them as we wrap up today. 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, this is Helen again.
Good morning, Helen. What's going on?
Well, following on to what Jonah Goldberg said, it's very interesting that he said that we're drowning in information, but we're starving in knowledge.
Sure.
Which is basically what the true Jesus Christ said would happen in the last days, is that the famine of the last days is for hearing the truth, for hearing the true words of the Lord. St. Matthew 24:7 and Amos 8:11. But we've got like a flood of lies, which is drowning us, and that's all. He also said that there'd be a flood of lies in Revelations chapter 12, verses 15 through 17.
Well, that's a great point, Helen. I appreciate that very much. It brings up to light the idea that you're right. I mean, we're flooding in information. We don't have the knowledge. I mean, when you can go onto Google, when you can go onto online and just search something, and you can say Hitler, World War II, and you can search that, and there's documented evidence of the genocide, of mass killings, of the genocide of the Jews, of the camps, of everything that happened. You can see photos, and you can hear actualities, and you can see pictures, and you see all of this that actually happened. And you can go and visit these locations. Then you search on, and you go down a little bit further, and you see some other pages, and they say, you know what? Hitler didn't do any of that. He actually was not that bad of a guy. He was brainwashed, or he wasn't brainwashed, but it was manipulated through the media at that time to demonize him, but that it actually didn't happen. And that's where we're at in society today. You're right. We have information everywhere. You could search something and find hundreds of Google pages for it, no matter what you search. Some of it will be real. Some of it will be not. We have to have the foundation, which brings us back to the entire argument of the parents and of teaching and trying to set your children on the right path, because they need to have, again, that stability. They need to have, again, that foundation. And to tie it up in a nice little bow from what we talked about in the first hour, the stability and the foundation of a social norm. Understanding that we're starting off at this level as a foundation, as opposed to starting off at ground level, trying to rebuild everything from scratch every single time. And the most basic of those arguments is the fact that when you're born, based on your biology, you are either a male or a female. We do not have to go on Google and see that there are 36 different types of identities and genders, because that's not true. There are two, and that is it. And there are some with a little bit of a complication, but that's like 0.001% of the entire population, and that's not something that needs to be mainstream. And everybody, of course, wants to be in that special, unique, nice little category to where they're different than anybody else. I get that, and they want to feel like the victim, and they want to feel special. I understand that, but that's not the case. And we need to have the structural foundation in society. This is how you operate in society. This is how you treat others in society. This is how you act in society. You do not go to a meeting without any clothes on. That's just not what you do. I don't care if you feel that you're a nudist and you like to be walking around with your birthday suit on in your home. That's your prerogative in the privacy, but this is how you act in society when you're in the general public. You do not go and talk derogatory about someone in the general public, because that's not okay. You do not go and say, I'm offended because you have called me ma'am, because they were trying to be courteous. And instead of being courteous and saying, oh, thank you, instead of saying that, you say, I am extremely offended because I may be genetically a female, but I identify myself as a man. You do not do that in society. It doesn't work that way. And we need to start remembering the basic foundation and the understanding of society. And the more we research history, and the more we research current events, and the more we study, and the more we become active, and the more we become engaged, we can make these right decisions, and we can pass that down to our children. Because right now we have a society where children are trying to learn themselves. They're trying to figure it out on their own. And children, by I mean high school and college students, unfortunately, where they're going without a basic foundation of understanding of social norms. A social norm being that foundation of what we build upon and we grow from. There was and I want to play these. This is the perfect time, I guess, to play these. There was a panel discussion at Portland State University, or Portland University. It was up in Portland. And they had a teacher on diversity, I guess, the diversity and psychology or something. And then there was a teacher that was a evolutionary biologist, a scientist. And they were going on and debating about whether there was actually two genders or different genders. Now, here's what the professor from the Department of Diversity had to say.
Well, social constructivism or cultural constructivism are often referred to as blank slateism. And if anybody hasn't read Steven Pinker's book, The Blank Slate, I really recommend it to understand this. It's the idea that all of our traits, our characteristics, abilities, cognitive, psychological, behavioural, are learned from societal norms. The idea that there can be innate or biological or inherited differences are dismissed. And so we're in a position where if there is injustice or if there is an imbalance anywhere, sort of inequality of representation, the only explanation for that can be that there is societal injustice.
All right, so that's their argument. Societal injustice, that if we don't break down the entire social norm, that social norms are a bad thing because people are just blind and that they're just going down this trail and that we don't actually understand it. We're just going down our own thing, doing our own thing. And if there's an injustice in there, meaning if we don't recognize other identities of gender in society, then that is a social construct that we have created for ourselves that is invaluable. And that we need to break it down and start from scratch again because there is an injustice in society for that fact that everybody should be treated equal regardless of whatever 62 genders that you identify as. That's the argument from a social perspective, from a social construct, from the social norm in society, that just by the basic foundation of you teaching your child that they are a boy or a girl because of the biological parts that they were grown with, that is a social injustice because it is injustice for when they think or question what they may be, rather than ensuring that that's what you are, that's how you grow up to be. And then we had the biologist, the engineer, the scientist, the evolutionary biologist that spoke and said, what are you talking about?
There are differences between men and women. This is a strange position to be in, to be arguing for something that is so universally and widely accepted within biology. What is not as widely accepted is that culture is also evolutionary, but I'm going to argue that biology and culture are both evolutionary. Let's look at differences between men and women that are explicitly anatomical and physiological. Are men taller than women on average? Does anyone take offense at that fact?
Some do.
Are you irritated?
There's always a standout.
So I would say, you could be irritated by it. You could be irritated by the fact that women have to be the ones to gestate and lactate. You could be irritated by a lot of truths. But taking... All right,
so right there, right as she's saying this, there's a protest that begins in the back of the crowd. And these students, of course, the ones with the tie-dyed hairs that don't identify as any type of gender, the ones that are the extremists, the university students are getting up and saying, this is ridiculous. They're standing up and they're walking out. At the same time, they're beginning to get a little upset with the scientists, the biologists, talking about that there is a biological difference between men and women. I know it's a crazy thought.
Offense is a response that is rejection of reality.
A rejection of reality. In all of biology, since the beginning of time, species, animals, we are part of that animal kingdom, if you want to believe in that sense with the evolutionary part. She's probably not very religious in her sense, being a scientist, maybe, I don't know, doesn't really matter. But being in biology, seeing evolution, quote unquote, in that sense, however you want to interpret that, there are two genders in animals. That is how they mate. That is how they reproduce. That is how they grow. That is how they survive. That is how they do not become extinct and die off, because there are two different genders, and they recognize that in the animal kingdom. We are the only ones who have gone to the point to where we question our very own identity as a gender to understand the purpose of that gender, which is a very unique position to be in, is it not?
So men and women are different on height. They're different on muscle mass. They're different on where fat is deposited on our bodies, right? Our brains are also different.
Okay, and at that point, she's starting to say that there are differences in men and women based on where the fat builds up, based on body mass, based on upper body strength or lack thereof. All of these differences, the basic concept of men and women. These protesters in the back begin trashing the TV cameras. They begin trashing the sound system. They begin trashing everything in the back while they're protesting. They end up having to call security and kick them out, because they do not want to hear it. We talk about the lack of dialogue, the lack of actually having a dialogue between two different sides. When we can't even understand the basic social norm to grow from, then we have a problem. And not only that, but they take it to a whole nother level and then begin going out on their protests.
That is not okay. Even the women in there have been brainwashed.
Even the women in there have been brainwashed. That is not okay. How dare you even say that?
Should not listen to fascism. It should not be tolerated in civil society. Nazis are not welcome in civil society.
If you believe in two genders, scientifically, if you believe in biology, in any way, shape, or form, and you believe that there are two genders out there and the difference between man and woman, then you apparently are a fascist. 316-721-8255. Interesting concept, isn't it? Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Ellis.
Ellis, good morning, sir. How are you?
Pretty good. I just two things for your guy yesterday, Burkamp.
Yeah.
And the guy, carbon dioxide is a poison and all that. There's a little article on the Manhattan Contrarian called "The Sad Rot of Government Science." It's a nice little read. Second, how do you say it? The Jacobins, Robespierre. They started the same thing. All those, social norms are wrong. We're going to change everything. We're going to have new holidays. We're going to get rid of everything that's always been here.
Mm-hmm.
They call that the Great Terror for a reason.
Sure.
So
When you
that's
don't have
where
a
we are now. They just don't know about it. They don't understand it.
Of course not. When you try to uproot everything and say that society is based on nothing but lies and a false reality and yada, 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 and we need to uproot everything, what would that do to a society if we all began to accept something like that and we have no basis to actually go under on how we actually function on a daily basis in society? If they create chaos like that, we're going to have chaos in society.
For the French, they got the national razor. Don't know what we'd get, but it wouldn't be nice. Anyway, have a good day.
Ellis, I appreciate it very much, my friend. 316-721-8255. It's true. This has been tried in the past, and guess what? Every time it's been tried, that society has crumbled and collapsed. End of story. That's what happened. It's not that I'm bigoted, that I'm closed-minded. If you want to be a lamppost in your own bedroom and you want your spouse to walk by you and try and turn on the lamppost, I don't really care. All the power to you. If that's what you want to do, brilliant. Have fun with it. But there are certain ways that you act in society when you actually go out there and you actually function. 316-721-8255. This is not it, by the way. Now, I do have to say, I don't have the audio clip, but I do have to say that the professors up at the top that we're doing the panel discussion handled it very well by saying that if these are students, then that's not tolerable, because if we can't have a dialogue even in a college university, then we have a problem. And thank God Kansas, the state of Kansas, the state legislature right now has been working on legislation trying to protect the right for any type of speaker to come to campuses, including conservatives, so that way we don't see what Berkeley's been trying to do, shutting out conservatives like Milo Yiannopoulos or whatever his name is, or Ben Shapiro or Ann Coulter or some of these more on-edge, fringy type of speakers, but they have the right to come and speak because colleges are where at least we need to go to have a dialogue and a discussion, and an open dialogue at that. 316-721-8255. Let's take a phone call before we take a break here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Tuesday.
Myron, how are you, sir?
Oh, I'm so pretty. I have to be good.
There you go. What's on your mind?
Well, for me, it's fairly simple. I respect a person's choice to be what they say they are.
Doesn't make it real, though.
Well, and it doesn't make me accept their choice.
Sure. That's true.
If you want to call yourself a tree, that's fine. But don't try to make me, treat you like a tree. If you're a tree, fine. Just stay there and stay away.
Don't make me trip your branch. You trim your branches, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, that's where we need to be. You're right. I mean, you can self-identify as whatever you want, but you have to realize that society's not going to accept it or realize that. I mean, I can say that I'm a 60-year-old Asian woman, and therefore I should, I don't know what I get from that, but I can identify as that if I want to. That doesn't mean when I flip on the microphone in the morning and everybody hears my voice, they're like, oh, that's a 60-year-old Asian woman on the radio today. It doesn't work that way.
This is a free country. You're free to think what you want, but you're not free to make that decision for me.
Exactly. That's a well-spoken point there. I appreciate that, Myron, very much. You're right. You can believe whatever you want to. That doesn't make it real. And it's easier, by the way, if you actually go along with some of the social norms in order for them to accept you in that way of what you really are, instead of living in the false realities and then trying to change everybody into that false reality as well. It's a lot easier to function that way, and you can get a lot more done during the day, too. Just saying. A few minutes to the top of the hour. We got to take a break. Wrapping up the show today. Your thoughts and calls when we come back.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up the show today. I cannot believe it. It's almost done already. Just a few minutes left if you do want to jump on 316-721-8255. Thanks again to all of our great guests today. that happened today. Tomorrow, we'll have a state legislator on to give us a legislative update. We're going to try and do that at least once a week to get some information there. As we advance conservatism every single day, this is how we do it. We understand, we educate, we dialogue, and then we move forward. And that's what we try to do. We haven't done it in a while, but tomorrow we're going to have a little bit of a tax discussion as the legislature's been debating on different tax-related items, so to speak, if you want to call it that, in the state on whether we're going to cut back and do some business tax cuts, which seems like a good thing. They actually used to be in place back in before 2012, before we did the overhaul when they didn't need them anymore by lowering tax rates for businesses in the first place. Now we're talking about reintroducing them. But then again, the first opposition was, we actually kind of need that revenue for like education and stuff. So we'll talk about that coming up tomorrow. This is your show. As always, stay active, stay engaged, stay happy. Stay productive today on a Tuesday. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason. Have a great Tuesday, everybody.